every one of you, I'm sure, can articulate and can characterize our drug development environment today. And what I've listed here are just some of the many characteristics that define our operating environment. Some of them represent constraints or even a contraction on the vibrancy of the drug development enterprise. Everything from declining rates of NDA approvals. We're now at half the level that we saw in the mid-90s. Success rates continue to be persistently low, particularly for certain therapeutic areas. Our environment, our operating environment, is defined by strong capacity constraints, and I'm going to show you some data on that in just a minute. We also see a number of characteristics in our environment that really suggest high levels of growth and potential, including much higher levels of clinical trial volume today than ever before. They are being conducted on a global basis, which introduces a whole new level of operating complexity. And we also see a very strong and vibrant discovery or pre-development engine, and that clearly is feeding the development enterprise moving forward. And it is really a balancing act to try to navigate through all of these different characteristics of our operating environment. So here I'd like to just share with you some data that we collect routinely at the Tufts Center for the Study of Drug Development. Some of this you have seen before, just to underscore some of the points that I just highlighted in that opening chart. For one, we see, as I said, an incredibly vibrant drug discovery engine today that is really feeding our pipeline. We've seen almost a doubling in growth over the past 10 years in terms of the number of projects worldwide in our pipeline. If you look beneath this, though, you begin to see that the discovery engine is stalling a bit. A growing proportion sit in pre-development, and a smaller relative proportion are making it into drug development, and that's for a variety of reasons. For one, the drug development enterprise has an increasingly limited number of resources that can manage and that can conduct our clinical trial activity. Development investment often cannot justify support for a particular molecular entity that is now moving into the drug development space or enterprise. And also an increasing number of compounds or projects are terminated before they ever even reach the development phase. Clearly, one of the major drivers of growth on the discovery side in particular, and then moving into development, has been the proliferation of the number of companies out there that are at least supporting one new molecular entity. And this data that I'm providing for you is pre-economic meltdown that we saw at the end of 2008 and into 2009. We saw more than a doubling in the number of companies, some of them very, very small, supporting the development and the discovery of a single project, relying very heavily on available capital, as well as partnerships with major pharma, major biotech companies to ultimately license in these compounds and provide the necessary resources for these smaller organizations to then support the next project in their portfolio. Globalization, as I mentioned, is adding a layer of operational complexity. It is the reality today of so much of the work that we do in drug development. From the FDA, where we have good available data, we see that today about half of all FDA-regulated studies are now conducted in the US, with a third of them outside of primary markets like Western Europe and the US. And that we've seen a really rapid growth in the placement of clinical trials in so many ascending regions around the world, including Latin America, Central and Eastern Europe, India, and China, and that is expected to continue. Capacity in this industry, as I mentioned, is severely constrained. This is data through 2007, and what you see is that headcount through that time period in development proper has been relatively flat for professionals who are working within the phase 2-3 arena. If you look at phase 1, which has been one of the fastest areas of growth in development spending, we actually saw and this is data provided by pharma, a slight decline in the number of personnel, professionals who are managing these projects. All of this helps us understand why outsourcing has become such an integral part of all of our development activity. And now, of course, we come to our current economic crisis, the current operating environment, where just in the past 18 months alone, we've seen announcements of a huge number of layoffs and consolidation, representing as much as 5,000 to 7,000 professionals within drug development alone. Historically an area that was not touched nearly as hard during these periods of consolidation and downsizing, as well as a drying up of available capital, an increase in the number of mergers and acquisitions. So all of this is beginning to redefine the drug development enterprise and speaks to even an increasing need for more outsourcing to manage capacity, to manage rising volume, and to better manage underutilized infrastructure. And we heard discussion yesterday about the LILLY Covance small animal model arrangement, which is exactly the case in point. That announcement was made last August. Here we had a facility that was essentially outsourced or provided to Covance because it was an underutilized asset.